You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flippin the Birds.
Touchdown, Eagles!
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to episode 181 of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, Zach Chavalella. How are we feeling, gentlemen?
Doing fantastic. You know, the Eagles are 4-0 despite any sort of reaction to, the defense and that kind of, they give up a ton of yards and a ton of points. It was an ugly win, but they're 4-0. And that's what matters at the end of the day, really. 4-0. I mean, I'll talk about how we get there a little bit later on in some aspects, but it's nice to be 4-0.
It's fair. How are you feeling, Zach?
It is nice to be 4-0. I can't disagree with that, Eric. Be a little nicer if my camera was working for me today. So we always have a backup for a reason. And, as far as the Eagles are concerned, listen, a win's a win. Definitely some things to clean up. There was a better game out of Jalen Hurts. Wasn't perfect. I would say it wasn't perfect out of just about anybody, though Nicholas Morrow came pretty close to a perfect game. But it was a fun game. It was exciting. My heart was all the way up in my throat the entire time, and it's been since the Super Bowl that we've had football that made me feel just like that. So, like I said, a lot to clean up, but it was exciting to say the least.
Fair. That's very fair. So let's get right into it, right? So thank you to everybody for joining us today. Eagles did win an overtime thriller. It was 34-31. 34-37.
34-31. You were so close, dude.
I had it in the bag, and it's the NFL, the referees, everybody was against me in this matter, and just did what they wanted to do. But I think the first thing that we should really attack, right, is why this game ended up in overtime, right? We know the AJ Brown touchdown with him somehow, some way getting a taunting penalty, right? Unsportsmanlike conduct, even though all he did was place the ball in front of the defender. And then out of nowhere, you see the commander just having a slugfest. He's what's the name? Damn, why am I drawing a blank so much? Sam Howell was just slinging it left and right and was just having his way with the defense. And it felt like that most of the game. I felt like the secondary was just really not up to par with everything that was going on in front of them. How do you guys feel about the last quarter? And I mean, overall about the defense as well. I mean, the secondary, we do know they're getting help, right? They signed Bradley Roby right today.
Yes, so that's true. We were kind of talking about it, not just that, but just some rumors and in general. And I know the Chase Claypool thing came up that it was a bypassing idea, but I thought at that time, I'm like, why would they go for a wide receiver when they clearly need help on defense? And now Bradley Roby's here, so. Yeah, I'm stoked about that. He wants to come to Philly. He wants to help Philly win a Super Bowl. That's pretty much the message that he sent out upon signing. So, yeah, it sounds like it's a low risk and probably rewarding, defensive back sign.
Yeah, well, I know one person who is really excited about the move. That's our boy Liam, obviously, who's been effectively pounding the table for a little bit for the Eagles to go out and get Bradley Roby. And it makes sense. At one time, and just a fantastic nickel corner. He slowed down a little bit over time, worked a little bit on the outside last year too, but that's just added versatility. So I think it, again, is a low risk, high reward move, just kind of like Eric said. But it's going to be a lot better to see Bradbury bounce back out to the outside instead of matched up on the slot where it didn't work. It was a good idea, or at least in theory, nice idea in theory. It didn't work. Now you have to pivot. Now you have to adjust. And that's what it looks like the Eagles are planning on doing going forward.
Now, do you guys feel like this is a Band-Aid move, or this is something like securely, like, hey, like, no, the secondary should look significantly better going against the Rams with Bradley Roby in the lineup possibly.
I don't know how. Well, I don't know how significantly better they look against the Rams just out of the gate. I think he'll get acclimated, and the team will eventually look. It'll eventually pay off. But I don't know how this. What to feel about Josh Jobe after this, because then it's more of a packed room. So does that mean that, hey, we obviously aren't seeing what we need to see out of Josh Jobe in the first month, and we're getting a little, panicked, and we need to have another veteran in the room? I mean, that's kind of how this reads, right? Like, they're obviously trying to add something to this defense to, make them more competitive against teams. I mean, there's no reason that Sam Howell should have tossed the ball like he did in that game. It's I think it is a Band-Aid move, but there's no part of me that thinks the team hasn't upgraded from it.
It's interesting you mentioned Josh Jobe because I know a lot of people are down on him, right? But looking at his numbers from last game, 3 for 6, and he only allowed 27 yards throughout the game. I don't know. I personally don't feel like it's the actual talent that's the issue, and I don't want to say Sean Desai that's the issue. I think what the issue is, there's too much cushion between the receivers and the cornerbacks. Like you allowed the you allowed the Commanders just to do what they want because you didn't want to give up the deep pass, the big play, right? But in not giving up the big play, you were giving up the chunk yards, like the 5 yards here, 8 yards there, the first down here, third down there. Doesn't help that the officiating crew. Oh, there's Zach. Nice little close up. Doesn't help that officiating crew was helping the Commanders at some point, right? But I don't know. Like looking at Josh Jobe's numbers, I mean, he's only allowed 27 yards in the last 2 games back to back, actually, and 4 completions in one and 3 completions in the other.
Yeah, I don't think that he's played particularly bad. And also, going back to real quick to those the officials. The officials were bad on both sides.
Yes, they were terrible.
Like, it doesn't matter who you were rooting for; those officials sucked. So I think Washington somehow shook hands with Philadelphia and booed the officials at the same time.
Yeah,
but
they were
besides
horrendous.
that, we competed.
So before I get into my Josh Jobe point, I would just like to announce, just like the Eagles, I myself am undefeated against this camera. So we're back. But as far as Josh Jobe is concerned, I think he slides back into his intended role. I mean, listen, he's I think played well beyond expectations. Yes, they targeted him throughout the game. That's because he's playing across Darius Slay. You're not going to target Darius Slay. But considering, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to throw out Slay's numbers in the game, right? 8 targets. Slay allowed 7 completions for 98 yards.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what happens when he plays against a speedy receiver. We've seen that over time.
Yeah.
When I say target, I more so mean like on a week in, week out basis. But having Jobe across from Slay, he's done, I think, an admirable job. Has it been perfect? No, it hasn't. But who expected perfect from Jobe? I mean, I think that's a little unfair to expect that. I think he's very much outperformed, outkicked his coverage effectively in this case. And so to have him return to that reserve role, to spot Slay and Bradbury on various snaps, whether it's just giving them a breather, whether it's they're nicked up and they got to miss a game, they got to miss a series, whatever it is. I feel a lot better about that personally. But to have Bradbury back on the outside, I'm obviously much more comfortable with that. But I'll tell you what, I'm also a lot more comfortable knowing we have that depth on the outside with Jobe on the bench. So I feel pretty good about the corner situation around. I don't think that the addition of Bradley Roby is going to fix everything. I think there's still issues at safety. I'm not too sure how great Roby himself is going to be in the nickel. I think he'll be fine, but is he going to be Avonte Maddox? I don't think so. So I feel fine about it. I would still like another move between now and the trade deadline. That's more likely going to be at safety. But I mean, the more snaps we can get for Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown, maybe that problem solves itself. We'll see. It's a lot to ask the 2 young safeties, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Got to get Sidney healthy first, right? But you're seeing a very exposed secondary. But outside of that, like let's talk about the positives, right? I mean, you're seeing a really good defensive line. Jalen Carter's an animal. Jordan Davis, an animal. Hassan Reddick, you saw the edge rushers really get to the quarterback a lot, which is something that Hassan Reddick said where you can only double team the edge rushers so much or chip the edge rushers so much to the point where you're gonna have to actually double team Carter and Davis and Fletcher Cox and leave the edge rushers wide open. So you're seeing that into fruition, right? And you're seeing the linebacker group actually come together. Nicholas Morrow, who was once on the practice squad, taking over from Kobe Dean, who should be coming back pretty soon as well. And Morrow had 3 sacks alone. Like I love what the side is doing with the first level and second level of the defense, right? I know the secondary is still, very very much questionable, but it's a work in progress, but it's progressing in the right way, in my opinion.
I'm not bothered with the coordination of the defense from the side because it's pretty much what has worked previously. Like it's not much different. I mean, Gannon's such a boohoo word, but they really say anymore. But it's not much different than what Gannon did, except you do see obvious. Well, you see, all right. So maybe it's a little bit different. Like I think that you see a little bit more blitzing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
from
that kind of
the side.
gadgety defense that we've seen from Gannon, but it's a little more aggressive. I think you're right.
Right.
As far as that.
It's not conservative.
Yeah.
By the way, Duck, yeah. Here we go. Anyway, so let's get back to business real quick. So yeah, I do believe it's relatively the same defense. It's just sort of it's sort of how the defense looked before the Super Bowl years, where the personnel just isn't quite there to make it work. And once it does get there, then this team is has it down on both sides. As far as the rushing attack and a rushing defense is concerned, and also anything really along the lines. But that's the strongest part of this team, both the offensive line and defensive line play. Defensively, hey, if you're getting pressure on the quarterback, and we've seen that, it also translates pretty much to stuffing the run as well. I mean, no one's really, ran on Philadelphia. It was almost surprising to see what was the running back for Washington, Robinson?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost surprising to see him like trot maybe 13 to 11 yards into the end zone on the touchdown there. But besides that, that has been the most consistent part of this team throughout the last month.
Yeah, and I mean Brian Robinson is a tank of a running back. So looking at that, it's I don't want to say it's unsurprising because again, this Eagles defense has been fantastic. The second best against the run. They're allowing 40 yards a game, 40 rushing yards to running backs, but still. So 40 rushing yards per game, like that's absolutely insane. It's second only to the San Francisco 49ers. So a guy like Brian Robinson, he may once in a while break through and get his in a more short yardage red zone situation. But the run defense has been phenomenal, and that obviously starts with Jordan Davis. But it's more than him. I think Zach Cunningham's done a fantastic job in the linebacking core. Nicholas Morrow was flying everywhere, whether he was coming through on the blitz, whether he was working in the run game. I thought he did a very solid job, really great effort. It kind of brought back up questions of why was he not on the team from the start of the year? Not that it bit the Eagles, obviously, but you look at how he's played, and it's just very clear that he serves a role on this team. So I would hope that he's able to continue this and that he's not going anywhere for Philadelphia, and that he's a mainstay of this linebacking core, because between him, Cunningham, and Dean, when he eventually comes back, I think that we have a real solid group of guys who can work that off-ball linebacker position. But then we start talking about the rest of the defensive line as a whole. Fletcher Cox was obviously huge in the game. His leadership, perhaps more so than anything. Hassan Reddick finally got hit on the board with a sack. And again, coming up against former Kansas City right tackle Eric Wiley, right?
Yeah, I think that's his last name.
What's the dude's name?
Yeah, I think it's Wiley. Last name is Wiley.
Yeah. Andrew Wiley. Andrew Wiley. Going up against Andrew Wiley, finally got that sack that he's been needed for such a long time, honestly, predating this season. I think this is the start of something for him going forward. He's finally just now healthy. He has this little bit of momentum. He's going to be able to build off of this, I feel, and this is what you're going to really need, and we'll touch on this a little more later on. This is what you're really going to need next week, right? So next week is potentially the first true test the Eagles have faced this season. Now, obviously, Washington put up a hell of a fight. It's an overtime game. But this is the first game where going into it, you know this is going to be a tough challenge. You could possibly even say that the defense played down a little. And it's also tough to figure out, like, who on the defense specifically played bad. That's what's kind of tough to figure out when you look at how effective this Washington defense was.
And I think that's my question, because nobody was playing terribly, right? Like I said before, it's just there was way too much cushion between the corners and the playmakers, the wide receivers. Like it didn't make sense to me.
And we've seen that happen before in previous years, and you suffer death by 1,000 cuts, and you continue to bleed and bleed, and the other team's able to take advantage of it. Now, Darius Slay, obviously, we talked about him. He gave up. He would say he had a bad game, I'm sure, right? We know Slay. We know his level of play is better than what he showed that particular game. But when we look at the entirety of the performance, it's leaving off that extra room. It's allowing these chunk plays to be accomplished by Washington, to let them build that momentum, to let them dominate these long drives, which is usually Philadelphia's MO. All of this really worked against the Eagles, and so it's that very same style of offense that you can't allow this upcoming week against the Rams. And hopefully it's not going to be the last that we see of this. I'll tell you that right now, just because over the course of an NFL regular season, you will see games like this from time to time, but it's something that they have to shore up so it happens as few times as possible, because that's going to be a definitely mark of concern going forward.
And to the point of how the defense played, and kind of that who played poorly, if you will, that question. Washington moved the ball pretty freely in the middle of the field, passing the ball. They had room, like you guys were both saying. It was when I saw the defense almost tighten up routinely in the red zone. That could have been reduced to field goals. Now there's times where I thought the referees got in the way of that. Just on a few holding calls that, like a couple holding calls that were made. I'm just like, well, I don't really believe that was a hold, but all right, I guess it's going to be tic-tac. I'm a big advocate of just let the players play at the end of the day, but also you got to account for, all right, McLaurin recovers the football in the end zone on a fumble. Like how that's the
how
way
probable
the ball,
is that?
yeah, right. That's just the way the ball bounces. Then and there, that's perfect defense. Just the recovery wasn't there, and that makes it a blown play. That's all. It's all that happened. Besides that, you got to be pretty proud of like how hard it was for them to score that touchdown, because they almost just lost the entire possession, 50-50.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I think my only issue was just that last drive, like allowing so much in those last few seconds of the game. I know that Washington started off with a little bit of advantage on the field because of that penalty against AJ Brown, which again to me makes no sense when you had Emmanuel Forbes taunting AJ Brown throughout the entire game, and there was no flag on him of it. But yeah, so moving away from the defense, right? Offensively, we saw a more well put together game.
Yes.
From the offense, right? It wasn't clean, it wasn't pretty, but it was effective. We saw AJ Brown completely take over the game. He had over 170 receiving yards, and I think he had 9 receptions, if I'm not mistaken, for 2 touchdowns. But you're still seeing elements of the game missing, right? You're still seeing a bit of explosiveness missing. My opinion on that is solely on and I hate to say it, I hate to say this actually, is them missing Quez Watkins, his speed, having him on the outside, being able to take the top off the defense and create that separation for the guys below, right? You're not seeing Dallas Goedert get the ball at all. You're not seeing much of a ball distribution like you saw last season. It's more so heavy AJ Brown, light Devontae Smith, and Goddard's just disappearing. But how do you guys feel about the offense from this Sunday?
I'm happy, of course, that Jalen, finally reached the 300-yard milestone in the game. It really did seem that was his true first good game of the season, and here's why. It allowed me to kind of just deep dive in different stats real quick. against New England Patriots in Week 1, Jalen Hurts put up 170 yards. Now, people were pretty much averaging 250-ish yards in the air, except for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson only threw for 13 yards fewer than Jalen Hurts. So you're talking about like out of the gate. I didn't see, I didn't expect him to play well. He missed all of preseason, so we can kind of put that on that over, over on that sort of excuse because it kind of does make sense. Like it does affect the game. Um, then, with Jalen Hurts, 193 yards against Minnesota. I mean, that's basically along the lines of what Bryce Young did against them. Actually, Bryce Young threw for 204 yards. Um, like it's a low number again, and Justin Herbert puts up 405 yards the next week against Minnesota. Um, Tampa Bay, 277 yards in the air through for Jalen Hurts. So obviously there's a little bit of a upgrade. He's he's making better plays. It's working out, and you're seeing that improvement. And then 319 yards for Jalen Hurts, which is the most anybody has thrown in the air against Washington this year. He Washington actually has a pretty good passing defense, and he threw 308 yards was the second most against Washington this season from Russell Wilson. Now, why do I read off those numbers through the air? Obviously, it's to show that he did progress, but it's also to show that there's a big discrepancy between every game that he's played so far and then Washington. Because while he finally broke into the 200s against Tampa Bay, he also threw 2 interceptions. He threw for less than 200 yards against Minnesota. That was the DeAndre Swift game. Well, Brian Johnson didn't deviate from the pass because they were pass heavy until he threw an interception. I think that's a lot of the heat that Brian Johnson gets is, okay, the game plan, the game plan, the game plan, then we're going to wait for a turnover or, to kind of switch it up a little bit. I I like in a sense that he showed the stick with with Jalen Hurts just a little bit more against Tampa Bay because he struggled but still broke into that 200-yard threshold. He and Washington, it paid off, right? There's nothing that you can sit there and talk bad about. But it's just with these weapons that this team has, the Philadelphia Eagles have, they should not be a practically middling offense in the air. You got, Dallas Goddard, you got Devonta Smith, you got, AJ Brown. You even have, guys who can catch out of the backfield. You have the Swift, you have the Gainwell. I mean, Zacchaeus, made a few good, huge plays, whether it's blocking or converting a third or making a grabbing a touchdown over the past 2 weeks. So you have talent there. Now I'm going to read off just a few averages real quick. Completion percentage, it's not bad. Everything's pretty much in the top 15 for the most part. Completion percentage, top 15. Passing yards per game, top 15. Um, Passing rating per game, top 15. And you kind of get into the nitty gritty here when you're talking about passing TDs per game. When you get into the red zone, you're not relying on Jalen Hurts to throw. You're kind of relying on everything else that's the running game, as far as maybe even the brotherly shove, or maybe even Swift, or could be Boston Scott or Gainwell, whoever gets the hand at that point. You are looking at the quarterback, which is surprisingly, he's the ninth most sacked quarterback per game. It's it's just you kind of worry about the types of plays that are being called, and is he leaving Hurts sort of out to dry? Like, is Hurts reading the defenses the way that you would expect him to at this point, or are they not on the same page quite yet? What I'm getting to, and this is where I'm leaving it at, is after one game, great game, fantastic game, first game of the month where he clears 300 yards. I'm not ready to crown the idea that Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson are on that same page through the air. And you do kind of have to look at the numbers from Jalen Hurts just over the season through the air. 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's averaging 240 yards in the air. So that went up, but it also went up heavily because of his game against Washington. So let's not jump on that bandwagon so quick. Let's just ask for a little bit of consistency. Now, if he does it against the Rams, I might be all in. I might be and say, hey, you know what? Maybe they are on the right track. But then again, what you're really going to have to ask yourself is, can he do it in a spread where there is Dallas twice, San Francisco, and Kansas City, and there's one other team I'm missing in the 5-game spread there. You're going to have
Buffalo.
to ask Buffalo. You're going to have to ask if he could do it during that spread. If he can do it during that spread and he looks better, probably maybe 3-4 games, at worst, then I'm thinking to myself, there's something to cook with here. We can be ready to have everything firing on all cylinders by the postseason. But right now, it's a little bit early to get there and say, hey, everything's fixed. It's not. It's not fixed. We need to see it happen more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that everything's not fixed. I think that there's still tweaks that need to happen at just about every position. I think that there is something to be said about not having a guy who can really take the top off, like Brian mentioned about Kez. I don't think that's the biggest reason that the offense is still kind of working through its demons, but I do think that does play a factor. I think that the offensive line's play has been a little bit of an issue. Lane Johnson has gotten a lot stronger as the season's gone on, which is good. However, as that has happened, now we're looking at interior issues. Cam Jurgens missed a good portion of the game and is now out for a few weeks with a foot injury. Sua Opeta was getting crushed in there for a while. So, it's not going to be easy to solve that issue as of right now. We've talked ad nauseum going into the season about the lack of depth on this O-line. So it's going to continue to be an issue. Now it's about, well, how does Brian Johnson adjust the game plan to counteract that new weakness in the offense? And it's going to be a lot on Jalen Hurts. It's going to be a lot on Brian Johnson. It's going to be a lot on the rest of that offensive line to kind of pick up the slack where Jurgens was before. And you're really going to have to scheme perfectly against your opponents moving forward into this tougher portion of the schedule, like you said, Eric. And we'll see if it's able to work out long term. I just don't think that there's a singular answer to the continued offensive issues. Was it a step in the right direction? Absolutely.
Yes.
But agreed with Eric. I'm not ready to crown this offense cured. I'm not ready to crown Jalen Hurts back to his last season self. But the team is continuing to make steps in the right direction. And early in the season, that's all you can really ask. So hopefully they continue to do so. Hopefully they start taking larger leaps as well. And again, you also need the defense to, specifically talking about the back end, to hold up their end of it as well. Obviously, the front four and even the linebacking core really held their own against Washington, but you need the secondary to stand strong also, and that's how you put these teams away early, so that way you're not playing overtime games, on a Sunday afternoon. So we'll see what happens going forward against the Rams. It's going to be another tough test. So we will see what it looks like when you have Sua Opeta going up against Aaron Donald.
And you
But
have Cooper Kupp, I think, returning as well.
He might be. I'm not quite sure if he might have to miss week 5, but he's at least probable.
Yeah,
but
he's
at
making
least
his way
questionable.
back. Yeah.
So either way, there's still other receivers in LA that you got to look out for. So it's a bit problematic, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you have to game plan very strong, and like you will every week. This is how the Eagles are going to have to handle every opponent throughout the entire season. You have to create pressure. That is where your defense lives and breathes. So you need Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, obviously, who's been one of the best at pressuring the quarterback, even though he is a rookie. You need all these guys and more. The Marlon Tuipulotus of the world. You need them to create that consistent pressure to ease up that job, that responsibility for the secondary that is kind of limping around right now. So getting Bradbury back to the outside, again, that's big. Getting Sidney Brown at safety, back at safety, that would be huge as well. So it looks like it will be getting better, but you still need everybody to perform at 110% in order for it to even out.
And to your point, you need a defense just to make a play. I think Washington was the one game so far this season where the defense did not come up with a turnover. I think there was a pick six, if I'm correct, against New England. The fumbleitis all over the place with the with Minnesota, and then there was the Blankenship pick. I mean, they gave Baker Mayfield, Jesus, his first interception of the season. So as long as the defense can make a play, kind of steal a possession here and there, I that has to happen against probably the most formidable unit through the air.
Yeah, and it makes sense for it to happen in this game, right? That's coming up. Let's kind of segue to the Rams and Eagles, right? Matt Stafford dealing with a hip contusion, and then he also has actually 5 interceptions already on the year. But the offense is averaging about close to 24 points a game. Offensively, like, we just kind of piggyback off of what Hurts was going through for the past couple of weeks, right? What needs to happen in this game for this offense to actually convince anybody, like, hey, okay, like, they're moving in the right direction. We know they were slinging it left and right against the Commanders. We know that they were running it left and right over the previous 2 weeks, but it seems like they have no identity right now, and they're failing at figuring out what they want to do on that side of the ball. Do they want to commit to the run? Do they want to commit to the pass? There's so many factors working against them because they're that good of an offense. They're that good at talent-wise, and they have one of the more elite quarterbacks in the game. But going into this week, what needs to happen on the offense for you to say, like, hey, like, this is a good step forward going moving on from the Commanders and the other games.
If Hurts can throw it for 300 yards, kind of again, like, that would be fantastic. But I think that's asking a lot for a quarterback just to go for 300 yards pretty much every week. I would like, and I think that Hurts has been relatively contained on the run as well. It's not that he looks slower; it's just that defenses are scheming to play him different. He had to beat Washington in the air because there was nowhere for him to run. And I think that also contributes to him being the the top 10 most sacked quarterback so far in the NFL. Is when he decides to take off the run, but maybe slides before the line of scrimmage. I mean, that could contribute to that just a little bit, but nonetheless, it's reading the defense, the play call, and things like that. What I would like to see from him is a clean sheet. By that I mean no interceptions and at least 250 yards through the air. I think that that will be something where I look at that game and go, you know what? Like, there's clear improvements, because as far as the the passing touchdowns per game, they average 1.3. That's 17th in the league. I would also like to see the play call if Hurts isn't hot in the first half, and the running game kind of does pick it up. I don't want them to completely abandon the pass. We did see that. Obviously, I felt like we saw that a little bit more in the Swift game, but it's kind of hard to argue that when he's gashing a team for about 9 to 10 yards a carry, it feels. But I just want to see Hurts, and like, I'm focused on Hurts. I think that passing game is the one worry that I think Eagles fans should at least have in the back of their mind a little bit, because I'm very comfortable with anything that the line does as far as pushing forward for yards. The rushing game, I think, is the strongest part of the Eagles offense, and it's wild to say that because look at the talent along the line of scrimmage for the passing game.
What about you, Zach?
I mean, for me, it's not that different from Eric, because he really kind of summarized, I think, what you want to do week in, week out, and that's clean sheet. Clean sheet's a big measuring stick, especially against a team like the Rams. They're averaging over an interception a game. You want to limit that. You want to make sure that you're not turning the ball over at all, but we especially don't want to turn the ball over in the air. On top of that, it's picking up the dub. So it can look like whatever you want it to look like. If you have 200 yards and 150 of them are all to AJ Brown, that's fine by me. But get the dub, clean sheet, and I'll feel a lot better about this passing game, because I don't need Jalen Hurts to throw for 300 yards every single game. I need him to be able to throw to victory. That's all I need. So against the LA Rams, that's really all I'm looking for. I don't think it's too much to ask for, although, again, it's going to be tough to take care of the ball against this LA Rams team, but that's the job. That's what they're there. That's what they got to do for us.
And I think a key component as well, I mean, we may have overlooked it, but Ron brought it up in the chat, is the red zone offense. It's non-existent. The Eagles could drive the ball down the field, but if they're not scoring off big plays, they're not finishing drives. And that's a scary thing when you have players like Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, and above all else. I mean, it's just
big Brian Johnson issue, honestly.
Yeah, it feels weird. Like it just there's a word that I'm trying to get out, but it just feels very the offense feels very limited, restricted right now, per se.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're coming off of a season. I know it's a different coordinator, and Hurts has had a ton of different coordinators over the past few years, date even back to college. But when you look at a player who pretty much was a MVP candidate last year and into his Super Bowl appearance, and then you see kind of what's going on in the first month. I don't know. Like, is this the 3 games that maybe Hurts should have gotten involved in the preseason, so therefore it's taken a month for them to shake off the rust into the regular season? I would hope not, because he's definitely played 16 quarters at this point, and it took 12 to kind of spark the initiative here. Yeah, I just want to see consistency. I think is the key for any want or any heat that Johnson has, and it's not even a matter of on the ground. I mean, what he's doing on the ground, whether it's just by execution or by play calling, it works. I want to see that in the passing game too. I want to see a complete offense, and the consistency going into this Rams game would do that. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it, because the defense, I'm already kind of accepting that they're going to get burnt. Like the Rams are going to get their offense through the air on Philadelphia. I think pretty much every quarterback in the league is having their best games against Philadelphia in the air. But my concern is what we do on the offense and how you handle Donald, for sure.
Absolutely. And then just kind of like look at this. I'm looking it up right now. So before this week's game, through 3 weeks, the Eagles ranked 25th in red zone efficiency, scoring a touchdown on just 45.5% of their trips inside of 20. That's insane. Coming off a team that just went to the Super Bowl, coming off a team with that amount of talent. I feel like in this game is where you have to actually find out that you can actually pull the trigger in the red zone and actually come away with big touchdowns. Jalen Hurts said he didn't want to rely on Jake Elliott's leg, right? So now it's kind of, put your money where your mouth is against the Rams. You're traveling to the West Coast, so things may be a little bit different for the team, right? But yeah, defensively though, I don't know. I mean, how much more can you expect from a defense that's actually really performing above everybody's expectations, right? The secondary, again, there has to be a gap that they close in between the cornerbacks and the wide receivers. There has to be a way you press at the line of scrimmage, and then just allow the defensive line to do their thing. I feel like if you're pressing, then you're allowing the defensive line a little bit more time to just maneuver their way around to the quarterback.
Yeah, I do believe. I believe that as well. Like if you are allowing, the defensive line more time to the quarterback, there's got to be a little bit more of. I think you got to throw off the defensive line with Donald. I want to see some screenplays as well. And I know that might be the bane of everybody's existence, but you got to kind of draw or delay or do some screens to kind of play with that line a little bit, play with their aggressiveness.
Yeah, I mean, if I can interject real quick just about the screen game, I mean, one thing that we've seen in previous years that we haven't really seen this year is the tight end screen.
Yes.
I think that's one thing that's really stood out. And as much as I would love to get DeAndre Swift involved in the screen game, and I think that's a great idea, we also need to get Dallas Goedert involved in the screen game, so that way we can get him rolling, get him moving. When you look, it's so common, and this is true for a lot of different sports, whether you're talking about NFL, NBA, what have you. Sometimes you got to get guys going early, instill that confidence in them so that they can keep it for the rest of the game. And I think that's what Dallas Goedert could really use right now. So when you're talking about offensively, that's what I really want to see, is getting this top 5 tight ends in the game looking like a top 5 tight end. That's one thing that's going to be crucial. But getting back to the defensive side of the ball, one thing that we haven't really seen, let's punch some balls out, guys. I mean, come on, let's create some fumbles. And they're not at the tail end of the league, but they're not near the top either. And that's the big thing that I want to see is the sack numbers are fine. I think they could do a little bit better just knowing the talent that they have. But let's make the most of these opportunities as well. You have a immobile quarterback like Matthew Stafford, and the guy who's hurting a little bit too. That ball security is going to be in the back of his mind, just knowing all of that. And so, really, make it hard on him. Make sure that you're getting hands in there. I want to see our corners throwing punches. That's something that you see teams like the Baltimore Ravens doing that you still don't really see the Eagles doing all that often. And it's not really Slay's MO. It's not really Bradbury's MO, but it's something that I think should be a part of the strategy, at least if you're talking about the linebacking core or the safeties. Maybe your finesse corners like Slay, maybe they're not going to do that. And that's understandable to a degree, but let's just get some guys looking to dig that ball out of there. And that turns the tides of games. And that's the one thing that I haven't noticed from this Eagles team so far is that ability to create those opportunities. Now they've had a couple here and there, but you really need to do that much more on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that Minnesota game was pretty much the what carried the luggage as far as our turnovers are concerned, or at least forcing them. But no, to your point about the tight end screens and if they could be executed better, do you think that if they were to execute tight end screens with Goddard and get him involved early, like you were saying, that would compensate for somebody taking it over the top? Because I feel like if you play and you draw the short game, the over the top game, like setting up the run, is going to make it happen with Devonta Smith and AJ Brown.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is that you're going to have to change roles a little bit, and Smith's. I could say Smith and Brown. They're both capable of working the deep game, running deep routes. It's not exactly their MO. Their MO is their switchability. Their ability to play inside, outside, short, intermediate, deep routes. But if you did want to set up, I would say probably Smith as that field stretching option. If you wanted to set up Smith to do just that, and then you can work AJ Brown as kind of your intermediate guy, and then Goddard is obviously your safety valve, and working him a lot in that screen game. I think that's something that would open up the depth of the field a little bit more. I don't think it opens up the entirety of the field, but it really keeps the defense guessing. It really gives you potentially some more opportunity to create a good advantage for a guy like Devonta Smith, where maybe you can get him on a deep post like we saw a couple weeks ago, and kind of get him reestablished as a deep threat.
I kind of like what Ron's saying right here, where it's kind of like, do you feel like our screen game has been lacking because now there's so many spies on a QB where they're already at the line of scrimmage, they're expecting something to happen in the backfield. But I do miss the screen game where Jalen would fake it to the running back and turn around and go to Dallas Goedert or Zach Ertz back in the day. It's something that's really missing, as much as it was something that was just being overdone last season. But then again, it's like I still feel like you're missing that. You're missing that weapon that's going to draw safety in the corner to the deep end of the field and allow Devonta Smith and AJ Brown really to eat up in the middle of the field, or Dallas Goedert to eat up in the middle of the field, and to create that mismatch from one of those guys. But yeah,
they
so
put Britton Covey on, in for a stretch to field.
I was a little
Did they do that
surprised
like
when
one
they
time?
did that. They did.
Okay, yeah.
I saw him touch the field. I'm like, wait, are they punting? What's going on?
I was just like, hold on, dude. This is going to go for at least 70 yards. Watch.
I really thought they were going to go to him. I really thought so for a minute, but it's not a bad idea. You have to be confident in Covey, and that's one thing.
I'm surprised they haven't tried Devin Allen in that regard, even just having him out there as a decoy one.
Yeah, I think the issue with that is because he's so unproven. How likely are they to bite on the decoy? And you're talking about a guy effectively replacing Kez Watkins' role. Well, I would say it's not so brave to suggest that Watkins is a better, more established player. specifically, as an offensive player. So if you're still running into those situations where maybe teams aren't honoring Kes Watkins, and then you're running into Kes Watkins issues like fumbling the ball after a deep catch, what's to say that you may not have that same issue with a guy like Devin Allen? I just think he's a guy that maybe quite hasn't earned that trust as a receiver yet. So it's not quite like you can just put, like, you can't just put a guy with Madden 99 speed out there and he's gonna, because it's not Madden, Eric.
You can just make it up. You could just do it.
I mean, it works in Madden, so why can't it work in real life?
But they're 4-0.
I created a player yesterday. No, I'm kidding.
Like, listen, they're 4-0. There hasn't been a need to try it yet, and the list of teams that they're about to go up against, there's no reason to get cute against them. Now, yes, or last game, I should say, it got obviously way too close for comfort. But that's the time where you want to buckle down. You want to get into what you really know, what you've really practiced, and execute. It's not the time to be trying new things. Maybe you experiment that with a little bit if you're beating up on a team, but it's not something that I see them just all of a sudden, hey, let's try this mid-season. I don't really see that.
You want to know who wouldn't fumble the ball downfield?
Oh, God.
Okay, I'm not going to say. Don't worry. See, when I build it up like that, you guys already know. I don't even have to say it. It's a running. It's a bit.
You're the warden of the Greg Ward Club.
That is absolutely it.
So
why is Doc? I've never. Oh my God! All right,
he's not lying.
I didn't go against the Eagles any week this year. None weeks. I
don't know. I feel like you did one time, and I feel like we spoke about this before.
In our overall predictions, I do have the Eagles having 4 losses total. We did the prediction show, but no. So to answer your question, Doc, early, no, I'm not. And you're going to have to stick around for a few more moments to figure it out.
Well, that few more moments is actually, I was actually going to bring it up right now. So.
You're going to have to stick around right now.
Let's talk predictions. Eric's favorite game of the day, right?
That's great.
Would you like to go first?
Yeah. Geez, man, I haven't looked at anything as far as spreads or whatnot. Let's just give the idea that if Cooper Kupp is going to return, then I'm worried about.
Is he close to returning? Is he really that close?
I've heard that there's a possibility he suits.
There's a possibility. I don't think it's likely, but there is a possibility.
And
there's a possibility.
Or there was a possibility at least.
And if they do load management him with like the amount of snaps because it's his first return, I mean, that would be fantastic. But I doubt they do it against a secondary that's been practically, exposed by 4 teams in 4 weeks. And that's just how I feel about it. I'm gonna give Philly the victory, but I think it's gonna be another nail biter, man. I think this is the first time. Like, I know I said, like, Washington are gonna blow them out of the water. So watch like the Eagles probably blow them out of the water this week. I don't know, but I will say that Philadelphia wins 28-23. It's gonna be a 5-point game. Why did you take yours, Zach?
No, but it's really close. So just based off these 2 squads, what they've been able to do this year, I'm sticking with my score because I like it. You know what? And I'm going to stick by it, and we're going to be huddled next to each other with these scores, but I don't even care. So just look at these 2 squads, what they've accomplished this year. I do think that it is going to be a pretty close game. You got to really look out for Kieran Williams. That's one thing. As
wait. Do we have to look out because he plays for the Rams? Or do we have to look out because he's on your fantasy team and he's producing?
Well, here's the thing. I'm hoping to walk into an L with Kieran Williams this week. I will play him. I'm hoping to walk into an L with him this week. I do think that he's not really a match as a rusher against Jordan Davis, but you gotta look out for him. Look out for him against the linebackers in the pass game. Short yardage, just dunk offs. That's what the Eagles really got to do to wrap him up. But I do think it's going to be a close game. I'm thinking 27-24 Birds.
Oh, okay. I can't do another nail biter, man. I was close to predicting this week, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. because I thought it was going to be 31-13, and then Zach played the Price is Right rules, and it's like 31-12, and that was BS. I don't like it.
So I'm
That's
going.
politics, baby.
I'm going
You're just
28.
sitting here betting safeties. I'm like, dude, who does this? Real mature.
Hey, whoa. It was a mix. It was a missed conversion. It wasn't a safety missed conversion.
Okay. Dude, the last thing I think of when I see the number 12 is a missed conversion.
I'm just saying.
I'm like touchdown, extra point, field goal, safety. That's it.
I feel like 12 is a Madden score when you miss the extra point twice in a row.
You've mixed extra points?
Shut up, Eric. Listen, I'm going 28-17. I don't think it's gonna be a high scoring game. I think the trip to the West Coast coming from the East Coast is gonna be a little bit weary on the Eagles. But I think they play a more efficient game than they have in the past couple of weeks, a more convincing game on offense and defense. I think the secondary is still going to have their issues, but I think they're able to limit Matt Stafford due to a couple turnovers. But yeah, I'm going 28-17 Birds.
All right, so that's a bird sweep for
Well,
Philadelphia.
2 out of 3. Me and Brian picking the Birds.
You know what? I don't need you doing that.
Listen, the people in the chat said they heard you say the Rams by 5 points, and I heard the same thing.
Don't watch us. They clearly don't watch the video that's on video. They clearly don't do it.
I heard it too. Like it came through my ears, said Rams by 5.
In the same way that you heard me wanting 2 draft picks from you, in the same exact way.
Hey, Eric, lay off of Brian. All right, he's going through a whole quarterback controversy right now. Daniel Jones is a shadow of his former self, and his former self wasn't that good either. So let the man breathe a little bit, okay, Eric?
So
no, I'm not allowed to let him breathe. He's a Giants
I didn't watch
fan. He's a Mets fan even.
Yeah, I'm a Mets fan, yes. But listen, I didn't watch the game last night, but I saw the.
How are those Mets, Brian? How are those Mets?
Yeah.
Huh?
Are they playing tonight, the Mets? Those Mets, are they playing in like, I don't know.
How are they doing? When's their playoff game?
Yeah. Let me know.
Listen,
ours is at 8:08.
Are they playing later?
What I don't understand is how.
8:08.
Time out. What I don't understand is how Philly makes the playoffs and the whole month of October turns into a different color, apparently. So let's not talk about
it's
that.
Red October.
Well, it would probably be like blue or orange.
Sean Connery died for this, Brian.
Anyways, did you guys see Brian Dable throw the tablet at Daniel Jones?
Dude,
I've never seen that before. It's kind of like, you see this? You see this shit? You see it? You missed this.
I'm gonna put it this way: Apollo Creed rolled over and threw the towel at the Giants. That's how. Dude, they're awful. They are god
awful.
Yeah.
And the fact that they won a game, who did they beat? Who did the Giants beat?
I think they beat the Cardinals, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Oh my god!
Yeah, they came back at the very end to beat the Cardinals.
Against the
Donovan Gannon gifted them a game.
The fact that the Cardinals were competitive against the Cowboys and got beat against the Giants. Now remember the Cardinals being up on the Giants like pretty heavily. Yeah, you know what, dude? God bless. That's all I gotta say.
And you know what? It's so funny looking at the Giants, looking at a lot of teams in the NFL, right? This is what makes Philly so valuable is the fact that they invest so much in what matters the most in football, the trenches, the defensive line, the offensive line. They invest so much capital in it. Even though it frustrates us when they draft the defensive lineman in the first round and then they go offensive line in the second round, then they get the playmakers, they still do it the right way. And it's mind-blowing in my opinion.
By and large, it's also that they know how to do it. Like, obviously, there was a recent miss on the O-line, and we all know about that. But
yeah,
for the Giants, it was a much bigger miss with Evan Neal. I think we can all agree about that. So it's really that's a dude who people were talking about him as the number 1 overall pick, and that's just, whatever
happened to Kayvon Thibodeau? What happened to Kayvon Thibodeau? Is he still around? Is he injured?
He's still trying to learn how to bend his ankles. I heard last. So we'll see what happens with him.
It's like where rookies go to crash and burn, man. This, the Giants, and dude, the fact. Exactly, and you were talking about their draft pick and like how he was projected to be like a top pick. Yeah, he was projected to be a top pick, just like how Marcus Smith was projected to be a first-round pick in the Chip Kelly area. That was a joke too.
Well, he was projected to be a third.
Well, all right, was he projected to be a third because he went in the first?
He was projected to be a third, and everyone was looking around like, "What the hell's Chip Kelly doing?" And I think that was the moment where people were like,
"That's pretty neat." By the way,
Chip Kelly's not all he's cracked up to be. And then now you watch. I was watching. I was at a bar in Westville the other night, and I guess a couple weeks ago, and UCLA was on. Oh man, Chip Kelly is not doing so well.
Yeah, you know what? I got heat with Chip, dude, because I did an 8-leg parlay. No, I did an 8-leg parlay, dude. I bet $10. I would have won 1,000. You want to know who the only team that lost? UCLA, 14-7.
Sounds about
14-7.
right.
They didn't score all game. They got into the fourth quarter and said, "I don't know. Let's make Eric look at DraftKings and be depressed." So yeah, you know what?
Brian,
I got people Chip Kelly outside of the Eagles.
Brian, I'm surprised that you did not know this, but actually looking here, Kayvon Thibodeau might actually be the Giants' best defender by far. He's the only person with more than half a sack.
Damn.
I came this close to taking you seriously, bro.
He has 3 sacks, and then the rest of the team has a combined 1 on the entire season.
How does a 53-man roster have a combined 1 sack?
We are 4 weeks through the season. The team has 4 sacks, and Kayvon Thibodeau has 3 of them. So he's doing better.
So he's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, right? That's what you're telling me.
For the Giants, at least, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're talking about a dude who this guy right here has 75% of his team sacks. Now, I think that's something the voters are really going to want to consider when it comes time for Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh God, oh man, I feel like the one player that each time I saw that the Giants selected and just I personally feel like ruined his career, Saquon Barkley. Like I feel like if he had ended up anywhere else,
any other team, right?
He would have been phenomenal, dude. Like anywhere else, he would have been phenomenal.
Let him come to Philadelphia, right? Instead, like, what if in a what if world, right? You had Barkley instead of Sanders.
Oh my God, dude! It would have been phenomenal. It would have been historical.
I don't think you even except for the injuries, but maybe the injuries don't happen.
But I feel like the injuries happen more
Eagles
so.
O-line, it is less likely that it would happen.
It's not
impossible because part of it's just Barkley's body, but they also worked him into the ground with no O-line. Like you can't just break that off.
Another part of it is MetLife. Like that field is terrible.
Yeah, it is not fun.
Every New York team field, whether it's actually in New York or if it's Jersey, the Mets field sucks. The City Field is atrocious. They have a swimming pool on the field. I mean, what are you doing? Like,
listen, no, City Field is dope, man. Like the fact that they have it is pretty dope.
Not dope.
It is pretty dope,
they
bro.
Have Mr. Met in center field, and then everybody leaves. It's
oh my God.
People are even watching the game. They're watching Mrs. Met the entire game. Like they're not even paying attention.
It's not even a big apple. It's just a mediocre-sized apple for the mediocre Mets.
Anyways, you guys enjoy your Red October, okay? I'm gonna enjoy.
We will.
I'm going to enjoy the rest of my evening because I'm very tired. But I love talking birds with you guys. This definitely has been fun, and we will be live again next Tuesday, right? Talk recapping the Eagles and Rams game, which is going to be at 4:05 p.m. on Sunday on Fox, which is great. But yeah, other than that, those are our predictions. You know, me and Zach are rooting for the Birds to win, while Eric is, of course, rooting for the Birds to lose because that's just his style.
Apparently. I'm not even battling anymore. You know what? They go 0-16 or 16-0. You pick it.
We need a meme where it's like Eric's face and like a little caption says, "I told you to lose."
Dude, the very first loss, even though I'm going to sit here and be like the Eagles win, I'm be like, yeah, I told you they would lose. Never bet.
Oh, God.
Here is a rule that I do live by though. If you are, because I don't really bet much anyway, but I know this rule from when I was little. You don't bet on the Eagles. I don't care.
No.
Never. Not a once.
No, don't bet with your heart, folks.
Dude,
do not bet with your heart.
Eagles versus Texans. Nope is the answer.
You may feel like you know your team better than you know any other team.
You know nothing.
Do not bet with your heart. You will only get hurt.
You know nothing, Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
I think that Philadelphia knows a little bit more than the New York Mets. Like we know playoffs.
We're not even talking about that right now, bro.
I am.
I feel like a lot of people might know more than Pete Alonso personally.
We're 4 minutes away from our postseason. How long away are you from your postseason?
All right, guys.
A year.
Well, listen, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese and Zach Chavalella. We're Flipping the Birds. We'll see you guys next week.
Go Phils.
Go Birds.
Yes, sir, and no, sir.
Flipping the birds. Flipping the birds. Flipping the birds.